I find it incredibly fascinating that the conversations that are happening in fields of science at the moment, particularly in the fields of biology and physics, we're starting to use this pseudo-religious language, this genetic Adam and Eve and God particles, and it's not that they're taking on religious beliefs, no, not at all. It's just that when we're trying to explain scientific truth, language is important. And, ironically, when the Bible was penned, we didn't have the kind of scientific knowledge we have now, yet they had this mastery of language that enabled them to talk about the beginnings of things and how things work without being able to explain it in the kind of modern scientific terms we have. So we have these incredible stories in Genesis where the universe is explained in terms of, the stars and the firmament, instead of talking about the universe. And we talked about Adam and Eve as the first two humans, and in science we talk about the fact that we can trace all of the human genome or code back to this idea of a genetic Eve somewhere in Africa. So it's incredibly fascinating that no matter how far along we've come, that we go back to the same language. So what does this mean for us? Well, it means that there is an incredible wisdom to be had in understanding that when we want to talk about who we are, where we come from, and the importance of life, that we use language that speaks life and speaks truth. And this is certainly why the Bible has been kept and pored over and studied for centuries. And importantly, there's this wonderful passage of scriptures. The psalmist, talks about how we're fearfully and wonderfully made, and we see in the book of Genesis, that we're made in the image of God. And we see in the book of John, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. These are profound statements of the created order, the place that we have in it, and the perfecting role of Jesus, because Jesus was the Word in the beginning, and in his return on the cross and the defeat of sin. And we can speculate what these things all mean, and as someone who is scientifically trained, one of my speculations, the thing I love to ponder, is that if this incredible genetic code that God has put in all life, all life has this genetic code, and we as human beings have a specific expression of that genetic code. And, all of us as human beings contain the entirety of the human genetic code within us, and that gets expressed differently. So whether you've got blonde hair or black hair, whether you're tall, short, round, muscular, skinny, all of that is coded in every one of us, just that we happen to express it a particular way, which is extraordinary when you think about it. And so this idea that we're fearfully and wonderfully made by the hand of God, is powerful language when we're trying to understand where we fit into the world. And in a world that's struggling with depression and anxiety and worthlessness and purposelessness, how important it is that we understand that there will never be anyone like you or me ever again. That the incredible culmination of the genetic expression that is you and me is utterly unique in history, in time, and will never occur again. And Jesus, when he came, was the culmination of the genetics of Mary, who expressed this idea that we have a genetic code that's been damaged by sin. And in Jesus being fathered by God, who was divine, was this supernatural, perfect connection with the damaged human genome, which perfects it, which heals it, restores it, recreates it, fulfills it. And so suddenly in Jesus we have the model of the perfect human. As Adam was born, originally with the perfect genetic code, we talk about Jesus being the new Adam, the perfected Adam, and the perfected genetic code. Now, you're not going to find that one in the Bible, because we didn't have genes in those days. We talk about genetics in the Bible. But it's fascinating to me that one of the things that the Bible is big on is genealogies, and genealogies, of course, are records of ancestry, which is really records of genetic code. So it's quite fascinating to think that the Bible has preserved this idea of genetic code being carried through generation to generation, and Jesus' lineage matters. In the Gospels we see, particularly in Luke, we see this great effort made in recording the genealogy of Jesus right back to David. And then, of course, we see the Jewish people, including David, tracing their genealogy back to Abraham, back to Noah. And, if they had the records, I'm sure it would go back to Adam. So it is fascinating, isn't it? But these are things that I think about, and maybe it's just because I'm a giant nerd. But as a theologian and a scientist, I see this incredible synergy of science and theology and faith. And people sometimes say to me, particularly my non-Christian scientific friends, how can you possibly have been a scientist and now believe in all these fairy tales? But the truth is, I found God in my search of science. I became a Christian in my first year of uni because in studying evolutionary biology, it suddenly dawned on me that this didn't make sense without a divine influence. And so I went looking for that divine influence, studied all the major religions, and landed upon Jesus. Well, I should say Jesus landed upon me, and the rest is history. Now, I might play with this a little bit, but I'm aware that this is a little bit nerdy and not everyone's going to be too interested in this one. But I do think it is absolutely fascinating, and I hope this has been a little bit interesting to you. Okay, bless you. Bye.